Welcome back to the Tuesday weekend. And this week we are talking about things that have changed in the restaurant industry over the last couple of decades that we have been in it. And in this block, I want to look very quickly at a few things that have not changed. And one of them, well, we mentioned the minimum wage. And then really, hospitality continues to be one of the fields most resistant to unionization, with fewer than 2% of all bar and restaurant workers across the country being part of a union. Even in the more union-friendly snapshot of 1980, as Reagan is taking his presidency, even then, only 5% of restaurant jobs were unionized. Part of, I think, why the tipped minimum wage persists, why is the low unionization across the board, is the fact that the restaurant lobby as a whole in DC is one of the most powerful in the country. And part of it too is the whole idea of, well, I don't want to pay you $15, so if I could pay that guy 10, I will.
Yeah.
Which I'm rereading Grapes of Wrath, and there are parts of it where he basically says that same thing. Instead, back then, it's the guy who works 15 cents a day. I'll pay him 10 cents a day. But it's the same idea.
Yeah.
And it's still biting us in the ass. We still haven't figured out how to overcome that, because there's the notion that anyone could cook. So then the value of a cook can't be that high, right?
There's the notion that anybody can wait tables. There's the notion anybody can host.
Yep.
I mean,
how hard a job can that be? Anyone can do it.
People don't think it's hard. It's actually pretty difficult. I mean, it's difficult to be good.
To be good, to do it well, really requires a level of professionalism as of any other profession.
And when you do it well, you do make very good money. You really do. On the front of the house. Back of the house, you have to own your own restaurant.
I was going to say, like, I was the executive chef of a place, and I was doing objectively a good job at it and still not getting paid that great.
No, they don't. They do not pay that well. And that's the whole restaurant lobby is I might have noted earlier and stuff, but I was talking to some friends about this. When Biden got elected, one of the things he was going to get rid of was the restaurant credit. And that's what is known in the country as you getting $2.13 an hour instead of minimum wage, because they figure you're going to make the excess of that $2.13 up to minimum wage in an hour in tips. So they don't have to pay you full wage. That's why servers, bartenders, et cetera, are all paid low.
Averaged out over the course of the shift.
Yes. The kitchen doesn't make sense because they only do 15, 20. I mean, I get it if you're making minimum wage work at McDonald's. I get that because you're just muscle memory. You're working in a kitchen where you have to create a dish. You're worth more than minimum wage. Trust me, the restaurant's making a lot more money than they're saying for the most part. They just don't want to pay you. They just don't want to pay the cooks. I mean, I've had this discussion at the restaurant. I've had it at the hotel. And like, well, we can't get any good cooks to stay. And I'm like, pay them $20 an hour and they'll stay. Like, well, we can only offer them like this much. And I'm like, if you pay them 20, they're going to stay for $20 an hour. I'm like,
geez, there have been a couple of jobs that I have left. And if the pay was better, all of the other issues I had, I would have sucked it up. I would have dealt with it, because end of the day, hey, at least I'm getting paid right at this job. And so I will deal with those problems. When I'm not getting paid enough, that's the cherry on top. That's the deciding factor.
What a lot of people don't realize too, in our industry, we all know each other pretty well.
Yes.
I was out with some friends. I was showing them Little Italy today, and like they're just like, Jesus, you know everybody. Like people are stopping on the street to say hi, talk to them for a minute and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I talk to people, but I know all the servers, I know all the bartenders, I know all the chefs, I know all the cooks. And believe me, all the chefs and cooks all know each other. All the bussers and stuff know each other. Right. Sometimes you have an overlap in jobs, and as soon as there's that one overlap, then there's this many overlaps, and then it's like this. You all just know each other. And it's like, hey, I'm not happy over here. Well, we're looking for somebody. Let me talk to my manager. And you're just going to leave one job for another job that's going to probably pay you the same, but it's going to be nicer or better for you at that time.
Sure.
I mean, you always hear the grass is always greener. Front of the house, it really can be. You find that nice niche, that great spot to work at, it's fantastic. Or you're doing the same thing at a different place, but you're making about the same money anyway. You know, and without that union representation where there's a higher pay raise, where there's actually getting benefits. I mean, the service industry is one of the industries where if you call in sick, you have to bring in a doctor's note.
Right. Which I think is totally unfair to require a doctor's note in a profession that does not guarantee you access to that doctor.
Exactly.
You know, I will say most of my adult life, I have not had health insurance through my employer. Now,
Yeah.
sure, at the ski resort, yes. With some of the larger employers at the big casino, sure. But the little mom and pop joint in Tennessee that I worked at, no.
No.
A bunch of the places in Brooklyn that I worked at, no. Because they're just trying to hold on. They can't afford to pay all of their bills and provide healthcare coverage for their employees, which again is one of the reasons why I think that, hey, let the federal government lift that burden for us. But, hey, that's just, crazy socialist Josh talking again.
I mean, and there's also back in the day, there were places that did things a lot better than they do now, a lot more employee friendly. Like when you hear about Costco and Winco and how those places are great to work for because they give you holidays off. They're closed. How they pay you well. They pay you better than other places. And they're just more successful. They actually make more money. Their employees are happy. And when I worked in Salt Lake, I worked at a place called the Oyster Bar. The Oyster Bar was owned by Gastronomy, which had about, at the time, like 8 restaurants, I think. They had a steakhouse. They had 3 fish houses. They had an Italian restaurant. But they did some cool stuff. Like because of that, they were able to apply for actually better insurance for us so we could get insurance through our restaurant, and it wasn't like $1 million. Because of the low hourly wage, we also, front of house specifically, had to go pay arrears. So the $2.13 an hour would not cover my taxes and my insurance. So I would have to go pay anywhere from $20 to $100 every paycheck to pay for my insurance and whatever else. But $20 to $100 isn't too much when you're making 3, 4, 500 a night. Not a big deal. They also did like their shift meals. Everyone does cool shift meals. These guys took, at the time, they took $3.99 out of every check. That was how much a value meal was at McDonald's at the time. But you had a choice of salmon, halibut, or prime rib with whatever you wanted with it. And you could eat that all you wanted or not eat it.
But $4 for the halibut. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll pay $4 for halibut. I'll pay $4 for salmon. I mean, and our cooks got really good at making dishes that weren't on the menu with that stuff because then they could create stuff. And some of those dishes ended up on the menu. So it was a really cool way as well. I mean, and they also trained everybody at every position. Like if you're a manager, you trained in every position. You didn't just walk in, they showed you how the computer works and introduced you to the crew and said, okay, have fun. You had to work in the dish pit. You had to work as a bartender. You had to work as a host. You had to do everything. Again, like you said, Josh, and we talked about this in other episodes, places don't do that anymore. They just, okay, you're this, great. We're going to train you as this. You're a manager. Okay, you're a manager. You should know all of this.
And this is just my personal preference. I am a generalist, not a specialist. Now, that doesn't mean I don't get good at what I do, but I would rather be able to jump into any position in the kitchen and be able to hold my own for a night. I want to be able to do whatever is required in the front of house, jump behind the bar, serve those tables, host stand, whatever it is, I can, because I've done it before and I like that versatility for myself.
I like that versatility in managers, which we will discuss in a future episode.
Absolutely, because I think it is important that the manager has that clear perspective of what it is like to actually have to do that job. Yes.
I mean, I can do anything but the hot kitchen part. I can do the salad station and stuff like that, but I'm not going to jump on and start cooking something. But anything else in front of house,
but also I have absolutely met people who have basically had the same job for 20 years, and I can't imagine. Well, okay, first of all, the first person that I am reminded of was one of the front of house banquet managers I worked with at the ski resort, who had been in that position since the resort opened in 1983. And I pray to the gods I do not believe in that if I had been in a single job for 20 plus years, that by that point I would have gotten a little better at it, because oh boy, some of the details she missed. It's like you would have thought by now, like that
you would know that.
You would know that, that. But I mean, I have joked in the past week that I am patiently waiting till I am old enough to know better. It hasn't happened yet, but
in the restaurant too. I mean, and this is an old line. Everyone's heard it. Like, I have really good judgment in a restaurant. Why do I have a judgment? Because I have experience. Why do I have experience? Because I had bad judgment.
Yep. Yeah,
I've made that
that's
mistake.
exactly.
It didn't work out. And then when you want someone, and they're usually young, well, we're going to try this. And I'm like, that's a really bad idea. Here's why. I've done this before. And I go through like, well, we're still going to try it. And I'm like, okay. And I'll give it my best. I'll try to maybe change it. You know, it's like time traveling and try to get the thing right this time. And no, it still just goes down in flames because it's just not a good idea.
One of the slickest push-offs that I've heard from one of my chefs to one of the other sous chefs was, how about we try that one on a Wednesday? And it was just like, okay, not saying no, I'm just saying not on a Friday.
Yeah.
But
and on the flip side, I had a bar manager who in the oyster bar who rolls out 30 colored sugars and and like a whole new martini menu on a Friday night while the Utah Jazz were in the playoffs. And he wanted us to have all that going right then. And I'm like, we haven't even seen these recipes yet, man. Come on.
Because again, part of that management job is understanding the workload and knowing this is too much to expect. But okay, let's take one more break. And when we get back, I want to talk about a few things that have changed that I think are better.
Okay,
things that, you know, have improved over the last 20 years. So
I've got a few of those as well.
All right, cool. All right, we'll be right back.